All right, let's go. So, my prompt to start off with the panel, which you were laughing at earlier, was, who were you before giving birth? So, let's also say your name and your national origin and your who you gave birth to. Chriz, would you like to start?
Sure. I'm Chris. I'm 39, non-binary. They, them is my pronoun. I have 2 kids that are 8 and 10, both born here in Norway. I will pretty much talk about myself as if I was a different person back then. I mean, 10 years ago, many things can happen. So back then, I'm born to conservative Filipino parents, moved around the world, lived from Australia to Philippines to all over Canada, different neighborhoods, different places, and moved here in 2007. And then my kids were born 2012 and 2014. But yeah, it was, at that time, I was sort of in a survival mode constantly. Because of all the moving around, I just learned to kind of fly under the radar, live the A4 life, and kind of keep my head down. But that had impacted my birth story considerably. But that was me back then. Yeah.
Good.
My name is Fungisai. I am from Zimbabwe, and I have 3 children, one aged almost 30, another one who is 16, and one who is almost 12. And I am almost 53. And I have had children in Zimbabwe, in Scotland, and in Norway.
I suppose I should introduce myself also. I am Sage. I am the moderator to this panel, mother of 0 children, but I research maternal health, and I am a foreigner living in Norway, so I wanted to learn more about this topic, so that's me.
My name is Lucia. I was born and raised in Colombia, but my heart is Mexican. That's where I was before moving to Norway. I have 2 kids, 2 little girls. One is Isabel, that is almost 4, and Martine, who is 7 months old today. I always joke with my friends that if you knew me before having birth, then you don't know me at all now, because I'm a totally different person. And I've lived around. I lived everywhere, and definitely when you have kids in a place, then you belong to that place. There's no doubt about that, and that also impacted how I told my story, how I told my birth stories, how I raised my little girls, and well, we will talk about it, I guess.
Very good. Thank you.
My name is Aisha. I am 20 years old. I also have 0 children, luckily. But I will be representing my mother, Harriet Susan, after a brief conversation with her about giving birth in both the Gambia and Norway. Yes. So I'll be looking at my phone a lot to check what she told me.
Good. All right, so we're here to tell a story, and now we're going to move a little bit forward in time from before birth. Now, what did you expect about pregnancy before it happened to you?
Oh, wow.
How I expected pregnancy? Having to be removed from my family and my social structure back in Canada or the Philippines. I based my expectation of pregnancy around the media, truth be told. What you saw in movies, what you see on TV, on what you hear on the radio, what people you hear as a smoke trail is what I based it off of. I was right and wrong on it, to be truthful, but it wasn't anything I expected to be. Like, if I, in retrospect, anything I wanted it to be did not happen.
I had no expectations because I wasn't planning to get pregnant.
Oh, yes.
So you see, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
So when I had my first child, well, when I got pregnant, it was not a planned pregnancy, and it was rather an unpleasant surprise at that time.
Oh, no.
So I had no plan, I had no expectations, and suddenly I was pregnant, and I decided to go through with it. So there was no preconception. I was just a young person having fun, living my life, planning my future, and everything was turned upside down.
Yeah.
So I think it's a slightly different experience. Obviously, the next experiences were more planned, but I think from that first experience, I had no idea. I wasn't thinking about it. I was 22. You know, life was ahead of me. So yeah, different.
Oh, interesting.
I wanted to get pregnant. That's the whole reason why I moved to Norway. Not because health system here is perfect, like everybody says. No. But I was living a very hectic life, and my husband too. We were always like, we were not even living in the same country. So we said, let's have children, but let's not have it like this. I don't want to be pregnant with you working and I working, and I was working 24/7. So we said, maybe Bergen is the place. Everything is so calm. And I always say that Bergen is like a little Fisher Price village. No offense. It's like, it's beautiful. But everything is so calm. People take time. And I was like, this is what I need. Pregnancy was just what I wanted. I took time. My parents came to see me. My sisters came to see me. I made friends. I was working. What I didn't expect was what happened the next day that I had my baby, and then the day that my parents left, and then the day that my husband went back to work, and I was alone with a baby that didn't stop crying. And I was like, what am I doing here? I had a perfect life in Mexico. I was running, I was the boss, I was doing whatever I want. Now, this little human being is running my life. I was like, at what time? And like, what happened? And then my husband coming, and I saw that we were not the same at that moment. Something happened, and we were not a team anymore. Although we planned it, we said, let's do it. This is what we need, you and me and you. And then he's the local, right? He's the Norwegian. And I was not the Norwegian, and suddenly I didn't have a job, and he was working. And this whole thing, like very Latin American, that he's working, you're taking care of the house, happened to me, and I swear that will never happen to me. And that was happening. Then, of course, those dynamics were like, but then, guess what? I had another one, and I said, this time I know what I'm doing. Nah. No, because I was a whole different person.
Yeah.
So again, creating expectations. So to answer your question, the only time that I thought that I was doing the right thing and I enjoyed it very much was the first time that I got pregnant.
Wow. Well, so Lucia has brought up an interesting point about your support system during the pregnancy, your social network. Did you two feel that you had that during your pregnancy?
I had one Norwegian best friend who just gave birth a year before me. And I had a complicated relationship with my in-laws. So I couldn't completely open up to them or ask them for their input. So I relied a lot on self-research and books and stories that I would find online of Norwegian births as best as I could. That was my baseline. But I wish I had at least a touch of, say, my family, my culture, some form of familiarity, but everything was strange to me.
Yeah, with my first child, my best friend was my support, really, because it all happened in a situation that nobody was happy. My family was not happy because having a child out of wedlock is frowned upon. I'm sure many of you can identify with that, right? So what I had done was just wrong. So there was a lot of disapproval from my family. Luckily for me, I was working, so I was independent. Because in my culture, if you get pregnant, you are sent to the man's house. And my father actually said that, and I said, I'm not going to anybody's house because I can look after myself. I'm living with I was staying with my brother, but I was able to support myself, so that made a big difference. So because there was so much tension, I know my mother was there and she wanted to support me, but because my father was so angry, and there was so much sort of disapproval and stuff happening and discussions around, really my best friend was the person who was there for me. She was there for me for antenatal classes, and my boyfriend of that time was kind of in and out and really not sure what he was doing. So it was really my best friend who was there for me the whole way, and she was there when I gave birth. So she was kind of my rock at that time. With my subsequent births, it was much better. I had my husband. With my second child, I had a bit more of a network in Scotland. In Norway, again, I had my husband and some friends as well. So it was a bit better. But I think I missed out on, at least I feel I missed out on that whole, what you're saying, the whole collective culture, the whole support from family, which I know many people have experienced. I didn't really experience that, which I think is a bit sad. So I can't really share from having had that experience, but of course I'd love to hear about other people's experiences who've had that family support and felt that collectivist, people coming around them. I love to hear those stories, but I didn't really have that. But I had people. So I was never alone, really.
Yeah. Aisha, do you have any thoughts from your mother?
Well, your story reminds me of my mother when she was pregnant with my older sister. It was also a very sudden pregnancy, unexpected. She was 18, also in the Gambia, so a Muslim country where it's frowned upon, out of wedlock. So I don't know in detail, but I think it would have been the same experience where there was a lot of disappointment, and not a lot of support. I think my mother had a lot more support when she was pregnant with me and my sister. She had friends, she had a husband, and people and family around her that would, come after the pregnancy, be there during the pregnancy, and look after both my mother and us children.
Very
Do
good.
you think that sorry that I asked, but do you think it's different now that people can connect through WhatsApp or through Instagram, and even though they don't have the people close by, they have them a call away? Would you think that it would be, because I'm thinking we're all foreigners and not everybody can travel to Norway. What helped me was that my sisters were like, no matter at the time, I could just call them. Of course, I missed that too. I missed that. Let's just do some, I don't know, songs together. Let's just do something for the baby. Let's, baby showers. Never have, only had one. Baby showers. People organize those things, And I wonder if the stories are now different for the foreigners, now that we are all connected, or it's just like a fake connection that we have them there, but we really don't have them there.
What do you think?
Technology definitely has brought us together a little bit more closer now than it has been, say, 10 years ago, when my kids were born. I didn't consider the fact of calling them. I knew that my mom was on her way from Canada to Norway, but she came the day after my child was born. She came a day early. But I think even with the technology, it wouldn't be the same way. Like, you want hands-on, you want contact. You don't want to feel alone. And to have someone tell you, there, it's okay without the contact, feels halfway. Like, it's not all the way there. And I think as humans, we kind of need that. Even if you have one spouse there, for me, I craved my mom, but she wasn't there. And same with my son was born. My parents, my sisters, my brother, and no, they weren't there either. So having to do that alone it left a gap in the experience.
I think I agree. I think, yes, it does help a little, but it doesn't substitute for a hug. It doesn't substitute for sitting and someone making you a cup of tea and just spending that time with you. But it is something. It is better than nothing. Yeah.
So this is kind of a unique issue to you all being foreigners in Norway. Were there any other aspects of your pregnancy that do you think were really impacted by being a foreigner? Maybe even your interactions with the health system?
Oh, maybe let's go there.
All right, let's go.
Do I start?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
go ahead.
You seem the most
Okay.
excited.
First of all, this is not a critic over the people, but the system. Because the midwives that I met, they were all wonderful. And I wanted to hug them. And I have seen them in the streets, and I'm like, you remember me? And they were like, no, because of course, no, there's another, a lot of other women coming to the ward. But so I had two different experiences. The first one, as I said, was like all flowers and sunshine. But I was a thin person back then. And what I didn't expect was that doctors here are as fatphobic as they are everywhere in the world. So by the time that I had my first one, I didn't know anything about anything. And then I was like, the midwives were like, you have to be strong. You know, Latin people are always like crying and they always want their mama. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I want to be strong, right? I didn't know. And I find now that is terribly aggressive and violent. It's a moment where you are so vulnerable. So vulnerable. So if I want to cry and I want to cry for my mama, I will do that now, right? The second time, I was a fat woman. And although my first leg said that I was a healthy woman, because guess what? You can be fat and you can be healthy at the same time. And let's not talk about the BMI and those things, right? Because it's like, this is a whole different conversation. The midwife that was the first point of contact sent me to 3 different appointments to the Kvinneklinikken. And I didn't understand anything, and I said, yeah, okay. The first one was to a psychologist, because I was not responsive. And they wanted to know if I was if I wanted to have the baby. So I was like, what gave you the idea that I don't want to have this baby? One. The second appointment was to a nutritionist. I didn't agree to that. But she saw me and she said, this woman has to shed some pounds before she has the baby. And the third one was to a doctor, a Spanish doctor, that is the one that is leading the obesity and overweight clinic at the Kvinneklinikken. I was like, and all of them asked me, do you know why you're here? And I knew. So I was like, oh, because I'm pregnant? And they were like, yeah, but pregnant, but old, but fat. So on the second pregnancy, I got my husband and said, like, come here. We need to have to talk. You have to advocate for me. Because I don't know how strong I am to go over this every month, because they are making me come here every 20 days to make sure that I am healthy, and only because of the way that I look. And I'm not going to weight myself, because I don't know if you have seen, but in Kvinneklinikken the weights are outside, so you have to step on the scale outside for everybody to see. That was a trigger for me, and that is a trigger for any woman. Like, why on earth are you asking me to do that? So I said from the beginning, I'm not going to do that. We need to know that the baby is growing. And I was like, you have a lot of technology here that will tell you if my baby is growing. I'm not putting myself on that scale. So of course it was 10 months of struggling. With my husband, it became like a joke because every time they were like, why are you know why you're here? And my husband then was like, I don't know, I just met her in the corridor. And I say, hey, let's have a date. And everybody was laughing. And they were like, and I said to the last midwife, I'm done. I'm done. You're telling me that I'm fat and I'm old? Yeah, but guess what? Fat and old, I want to have this baby. So what are we going to do? So it's the first thing that every time that someone says, I'm going to have a baby in Norway, and they don't look 100% Norwegian, I'd say all the time, advocate for yourself, and if you cannot advocate for yourself, find somebody that will. Hopefully that person speaks 100% Norwegian. Because the other thing that was happening is that the midwives were looking at my husband like, please get some sense into this woman. And my husband was like, and I was like, thank you. If there's something that, yeah, he was great, but because he knew me, and we've been through this conversation so many times. So yeah, it is great. At the time where you're having your baby, the midwives are great. I've never seen so much domain and experience, and you can tell. You leave your life there, and then they all take care of it. But the process to getting there, the process after is like, well, you had your baby, bye. And then you're like, what am I supposed to do? If it's difficult with one, then with two, it's like, and how am I going to do it? And guess what? I didn't have a support back then, well, 7 months ago either. Because it turns out that pandemic didn't make life easier for anybody, right? So again, this is against the system, because I also know that the midwives have to follow orders, and they're understaffed, overworked. They're like, oh my God, this woman is coming here and she doesn't want to weigh herself. Oh, I understand. So it's not personal with anybody, but the system is not made for people that look like me and that have my culture.
Thank you for sharing. That's a very terrible experience.
Yeah, but I have a beautiful baby, so
Oh,
it's like
all right, that's good. That's good. It was worth it, maybe. Yeah. Chris, do you have anything? You also seemed excited
my
about
God.
this topic.
Where do I even begin? So like I said, I was completely removed from my culture, my family, my support system. So having to go through the system alone. Well, I have my, or now ex-husband. He was the only grounding thing I had to kind of lean my faith into the public health system. And so whenever him and his mom, who's also a nurse, was just like, oh, you need to do this, you need to do this, I just went and followed, survival mode. When something fell off, as you said, had to advocate for yourself. I told them about, I have no family here. I have anxiety. I don't know how things are working. The midwife, or was it the midwife, Jumo, at the helsestasjon? She met us up at Koko and gave us a tour of how things worked. I'm like, okay, that's possible. I didn't know it was possible, but it really felt like she went out of her way to make it comfortable for me. But the fact that also that I was wanting things that were closer to like a home birth felt so foreign to me. I didn't know what was offered. I didn't even know there were 2 different departments at Koko. So when they showed me and gave me this tour, I'm like, oh, I can actually do this. But I didn't know how difficult it would be to have them to culturally understand how I wanted a certain atmosphere. I wanted a certain kind of system for me. But I didn't have the words back then. So to advocate for myself when I didn't have the vocabulary was even harder. And a lot of the nurses back then were not so comfortable with listening to English. So I had someone else advocate for me. I just told them point blank, here's what I need, get this done, and then just leave it be. I didn't go as far as I wanted to go, but I just wanted to be comfortable. That was my baseline.
Yeah, it's really interesting listening to your stories because your experiences are what made me want to become a doula. But my experience, I guess, because with my first child, I didn't know anything, and I was just told that, oh, now you are going to do this, and now doctor is going to do this, and now you're going to go here. And I ended up with a lot of pain, and I said to myself, next time I have a baby, I'm going to find out, I'm going to have more control over the experience. So, how many years later? 14 years later, second baby. So now becoming an old parent. And what I did, this was in Scotland. And I think towards the end of my pregnancy, we were all set for a hospital birth. We had a lot of great care. I found out about home birth, and I decided I'm going to have my baby at home. And my husband was like, and then I said, and I'm going to have my baby in water. And he was like, So, my husband is not a great reader. I mean, he reads sort of academic stuff, but not things. But he read a home birth book, and he read a water birth book. And in Scotland, you have the choice. You can choose to have a baby in hospital. You can choose to have a baby in like Storken, the halfway. And you can choose to have a baby at home. And this is all under the public health system. So I went to my doctor and I said, I want to have a baby at home. And they said, okay. And they got the home birth midwives to come to our house to talk to us. They set everything up. And I had the most incredible birth. That's my favorite birth. I had the most incredible birth. With my daughter, then we moved to Norway. And I was like, I'm going to do the same. Now I'm in my early 40s. Of course, there was all geriatric pregnancy. You need to get this checked. And I was like, no, thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
Geriatric pregnancy here is after 35.
Well,
35 geriatric.
so imagine
like
I was 40, so...
No, I'm 40. Imagine, I am 40. I just had a baby. And it's like, I don't look that old.
No. No, you don't.
Right? I'm like, oh, God, this is not good.
Yeah, but like you say, you come to Norway, right, and there's no information.
Yeah.
No.
In Scotland, there was information. There were pamphlets. There was everything. You were given the information. In Norway, there's no information. So I managed to find out. I said, what can I do? What is possible? And they were like, of course, you can have birth wherever you want. But there was no support for that. So we paid for an independent midwife, and I had my birth at home again. But this was through my making that effort, informing myself, finding out the information. And my husband is not Norwegian. He's German. So we were both foreigners. But we managed to figure it out. But we had that advantage of age, of experience, of having lived in a different society, of having informed myself and knowing what I wanted and what I didn't want. And that makes a lot of difference. But the system, as you said, was not helping. All this I found out on my own, got in touch with an independent midwife. She was absolutely wonderful. And, it was a great experience. But this was all on my own initiative. And I think that's extremely problematic. When as women, we don't get the support. It's either... You go to hospital, if you want anything slightly different, and even within hospital, you still kind of try to push you into a certain box, and I think that's not support, and that is not giving women choice.
Especially because there's different pregnancies, and if you have a good pregnancy, you can make choices. But if you are in pain, if you are sick, how are you making those choices? Then there's no way to go.
There's no support.
Then you have to just follow and then pray that everything will be okay for you.
Right. So moving on to the birth. After you've been pregnant, what's happening at that point?
That's why I love midwives.
Right.
Because birth that itself was the most amazing experience. I love midwives. I love midwives. If any of you is pregnant right now, like, I love midwives. At that point, I'm like, thank you. And every time that I see one, I say how amazing they are because I think they're amazing. If I could just go to university again and do something, I'd probably become a midwife. I open my mind of so many things that you can do being a midwife. The first one was a pregnancy that was like fast. Of course, fast, I was 42 weeks, right? So I was like, okay, I'm not an elephant. Come on, let's go. I'm done. But 42 weeks plus 4 days. So it was fast. The second one, because again, sugar levels and pressure, and I didn't have any of that. I was, again, as I say, healthy. They said, 40 weeks, that's enough, you're coming. And I was like, okay. And my baby didn't want to come out. I was like, okay, you can say whatever, but if she doesn't want to go out, then what are we going to do? And that's when I met a midwife, and I said, listen, let's do this like the last time. I want this. And it was a very long birth because she was stargaze. That's when the baby is looking up. And I said to them that I didn't want to go, because they said, well, if the baby's not coming, then we have to just go through surgery. And I said, let me try this first. I have always felt very connected to my daughters. I knew that I wanted them. I didn't wanted to have them during the pandemic, so I waited. And then, it was just as Norway opened up, I said to my husband, this is it. This is when we're getting pregnant. And then we got pregnant. And then we had our baby, right? So I was like, no, let me just. And then something happened, and in the room, there were a lot of midwives just with me, just having conversations, trying for me to just calm down because it was getting more painful every time and the baby was not coming. So just so you understand, and not to be graphic, but the baby was crowning and then she was getting back, and that hurts. But they were there, and they were like telling me stories and where did they study, and that made me feel like, well, my sister was not there, my mom was not there, but I had a group of women around me just there, sitting there. Do you want some more water? Tell me, why do you say that you're Mexican by heart? What did you study? Tell me stories about your little girl. And that was great. That was the most amazing thing. That's why I love them.
Oh. I have two very, very contradicting births. I had to write down notes just because I'm ADHD and this could go in any direction. The first one, my daughter, who is now 10, the contraction started first thing in the morning, about 4 o'clock. Didn't get to Coco until the evening, about 14 hours later. Had to lie to my now ex-husband, tell them that the contractions are 2 minutes in between because this is going on for too long. They won't let you in unless it was a certain amount of minutes in between. And I'm like, nope, this is too long. I need to get in. So they're like, yeah, now it's that much. Go ahead. I'm like, okay. Then they took me over to Stoken because I wanted to have the water birth myself. Wound up trying everything from hypnosis, acupuncture, the water birth, everything they could possibly offer, I tried. Did not work. So the entire ordeal was about 3 days for my daughter. Same with my son. So they popped the amniotic sac, then sent me over to Bergen. There I ended up getting the epidural. And then I got cut because my daughter was taking her sweet time getting out. Jesus Christ. That meant to 1.5 liters of blood loss. She ended up having to get pulled out. I got stitched up and then moved downstairs. But during that time, I had the overläge, their student, the läge, their assistant, the Jumel, their assistants, my bestie, my partner, plus my mother-in-law in the room. It was a full theater event. So upon that first experience, I learned that I had immunity to oxytocin. They pumped me to the max with oxytocin just to get the contractions going, but it wasn't enough to get my daughter out. So hence her being pulled out, me being cut. And then luckily my mom arrived the day after. I'm like, thank God, I can rest. My son, on the other hand, was completely different. As the movies kind of dictate, sometimes your water breaks in the most unlikely of places. Mine broke on the bubonen.
Oh
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thankfully, it was dark jeans. No one could tell what had happened. I walked out discreetly going, what the hell? I got checked at Cocoa. They sent me home. They told me come back the next day and see if the contractions started. Contractions didn't start. They sent me over to Fitton immediately. I was like, I'm not going through the first ordeal all over again. So they had me on monitor, giving me the pills to get the contraction started. Then they had me on epidural. They missed the first time, so they went in for a second. Yeah, those needles are not a joke. So it became a waiting game again. And so at the point where they had an emergency team outside having a meeting, I was telling the midwife that was in the room, hey, I think I need to do a number 2. She's like, what? I'm like, I think I need to do a number 2. She's like, what are you talking about? Her back was turned to me, so she couldn't see what was going on. And I was like, I really need to go. She turns around. She's like, my son was about to fly out. The emergency team was not needed. She had to catch him, quite figuratively. So that was very quick. No damage, no shock, thank God. Unfortunately, because the ordeal took too long between the water breaking and him coming out, he had consumed some amniotic fluid. He was 6 weeks too early. So he had gulsot, jaundice, and got moved to the ICU for a week after that. So I was there going from Coco over to ICU for an entirety of a week. So that was a hell of an experience, to say the least, on both sides. But if it says on the movies that, water breaks at any point, it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, mine were not so dramatic.
That's good.
My first was, again, as I said, I just did what I was told. And I think the difference there was I went to hospital and I lay on the bed the whole time and I didn't realize that lying still like this was causing me more pain. But I didn't make a sound. I gritted my teeth. My friend patted me and massaged my back. Until I was taken to the theater and the doctor, I lay on my back again and they told me to push and I pushed and obviously baby wasn't coming and they cut. He came out and, that was done. 14 years later, I learned that you move. You do not lie still. You do not lie on your back. So that was a completely different experience where I was moving the whole time. And then when it came close, I was in the birthing pool and I gave birth on my knees. And it was the most beautiful experience. It was in the morning, the sun was rising, there was music, I had my soundtrack playing. It was magical. It was absolutely magical. And I caught my son as he came out. He kind of swim up and I caught him and I put him in my arms. And it was the most beautiful experience I've ever had. And I said, you know what? I want everybody to have this experience. And then 4.5 years later.
Before we go on to the third birth, I'm just curious, what birthing position did you two use?
So the first one was like super fast.
Okay.
The thing is, I also lied. But I said to my husband, these people are like really not understanding because they're deaf. I'm in pain. And they're like, well, you live in the city, you go and go back. And I was like, what if I just wait in the cafeteria? And that's what I did. Yeah, so I lied. The second time I was like, I don't have to lie because they're asking me to come here. So the first one was really fast, and I was laying, and then the baby just came. And it was beautiful also because it was like January. Also, that's something that the Norwegians don't do because barnehage. So, but I had the hospital just for myself. And it was like the window was full of snow. And it was just, the hospital was just for me, so it was like quick. So I was like just laying down, and then the baby came. When you have a stargaze baby, then you have to move. Then that's when you understand that you have to move. So they tried every single position. Every single position. And my baby became when I was on the side. Because, it was like her last option before I had to go to, and they had to cut me, and I was like, no way. A C-section, a recovery is way more difficult than a vaginal one. So I'm like, no, I don't want to go through that. So yeah, that's how it was.
Right. Birth positions?
Birth positions, both on my back, legs splayed. And can we define being cut, by the way? Just there's cesarean where it's cut across here.
Episiotomy.
Yeah, and then there's the other type of cut where they make your vaginal opening larger by another 3-4 inches. Yeah, depending. But yeah, that kind of healing process is.
Oh, stress over there.
I hear the reactions. Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah. So both were on my back, and I had no choice just because of the epidural and just the severity of the situation. It's been 3 days for both my kids to come out. They're like, nope, we're just gonna get them out as quickly as possible. Yeah.
Were they in distress?
My son was, because the water had broken and he's been in there for too long. My daughter, no, I think she was just being a prima donna and was waiting for an entire audience to be there. Like that little card that you get at the end of who says who was in that room. They didn't have enough room for everybody, so I was pretty sure she was waiting for an audience. But yeah, it was both just traumatic and way too many people in the room.
Aisha, do you know anything about your mother's birth position?
So since she was pregnant with twins, I guess she didn't have much choice. She got cut open, and after that she got inner bleedings. So it was pretty dramatic. Like everyone had to get moving, and my mom says she doesn't remember a lot from the birth because she was pumped with drugs and she was hallucinating, and thereafter because of the inner bleedings she didn't get to meet both me and my sister for a long time, and my father had to take care of us. But on the other question on how she was treated in the hospital, my mother could speak Norwegian. She had lived in Norway for a pretty long time before that. So she says she had a very good experience. Actually, she also got a lot of special treatment because she got twins and stuff. But she mentioned one situation where she was visiting her doctor, and she was laying on her back, and she said that she was in pain, but he demanded that she would continue laying on her back, which is no go. And that's the only thing she mentioned.
Fungisai, do you want to say more about your Norwegian birth?
Oh, it was fast.
Okay.
I think by the time you get to number 3, everything's everything's used to giving birth. So it was fast. She was born in roughly from when I started getting real contractions in about 2.5 hours. And if anyone tells you that a fast birth is, have a fast birth, don't. It is the most painful thing I've ever experienced because you don't get a break. It's a contraction upon contraction. You don't get a contraction and then breathe and then relax and then it just So, sorry. So I just felt that I didn't get a break, and it was really hard. And I remember because we had the birthing pool, which is kind of made of rubber, and I was kneeling and I was holding on, and I knew that don't tense, because if you tense your body, everything closes up. So I had my arms hanging, and the only thing I could do was hit my head against the side of the birthing pool. And I remember, I think for the first time, my husband realized that I really was in pain, because I handled pain quite well. And he really realized, okay, she's having a hard time here. And he felt very sorry for me. I was sort of massaging my back. But I think that was, it was quite dramatic, but not in a sort of, and I think this, having my babies at home has made a big difference to my experience. It makes me calmer, it makes me feel more in control, and I have that one midwife or 2 midwives in Scotland who are there the whole time and can monitor what's happening. So I think that has really, really made a big difference to my experiences, and how positive they've been because of that's what you call the continuity of care, where you have the one person looking after you, which is ideal, which is how it should be, really. And I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. So, yeah, I was on my knees again. So, you know,
Okay.
it makes it easier, gravity.
Is there anything that really shocked you about giving birth that maybe our audience wouldn't have thought about?
That you don't remember the pain afterwards. I remember being in pain with the first one. I'm like, I grabbed my husband and said, like, listen, we're never doing this again. You owe me for your life. Like you owe me so much that you cannot understand. And he was like, okay. He's used to this dramatic Latinness of me. But he was just laughing. And then after I had my baby, I was like, let's do this again. And we did. But yeah, that we don't remember. And then my mom told me, yeah, that's how, the body is perfect, actually. The body is so perfect. It's so perfect. Doesn't matter how you look. Doesn't matter how healthy or not you are. Doesn't matter how prepared you are. The body knows. And that was like, that's one of the bubbles that is like, now you're not the same because you trust your body so much. It's amazing.
Yeah, that realization as well. Not with my first because I got cut. That pain remained for like months, and I didn't feel myself the same way for a long time. My son, on the other hand, since he flew out, it wasn't even like an hour later that I was sitting up cross-legged going, can I get out of here now? Like, I'm done. I don't remember anything when it comes to that pain. And even with having to be stuck twice on the back and also salt injections, that was so much worse than the epidural. Just after all of that was done, couldn't remember a thing when it comes to the pain. So that wonder of the human body, of being able to just go through something as huge as that and go, I'm ready to go. Like, can we get out now? Like, this is, I have the manual, I have the first kid, I'm ready to go already, but couldn't. But yeah, just that release of, did that just happen was astonishing, really.
Yeah, I think you're right, because you go from feeling a lot of pain to wonder, you know, because all of a sudden there's this person and you're like, oh, this person came out of me. So I think that, that just the two, that pain, and I think for me the pain is different from when you break a leg, when you sprain something, when you've got a headache, because it's a constructive pain. It's pain where your body's working to move your baby out. So I think there's a different, and I think there should be a different relationship to the pain. Yes, it's sore, but it's about something constructive. Your body's doing something. It's working towards something. So that helps. And then, of course, once the baby's out, the pain is gone. It's like this. It's like nothing you've ever imagined. You can take a Paracet or ibuprofen. It's not the same. It's like there, you're like, oh, and then like, oh, wow. You know, so the hormones of birth and just the incredible way that the body works. It's totally amazing. So I think that we can't really explain that. We can say it, but yeah, you have to kind of experience it too.
Yeah, it's either you feel the pain and then it's gone.
And then it's gone.
How is that possible?
Yeah. How is that possible? But I think that's the most wondrous thing about it.
No, I can't personally relate to that.
If you want to have kids, then you will remember us. You will remember us if you decide to have kids.
But I remember something my mother told me shocked me a lot when she was talking about her birth in the Gambia. She was talking about how like unprepared and, you know, misinformed and just weren't very knowledgeable and, you know, good at taking care of my mother. And then she like told me how one of the sykepleier, nurses told my mother, she said to her, it felt good when he was fucking you, so now you have to deal with the pain. And she said that a lot of people experienced that when they were giving birth. So it must have been a very stressful birth, you know, with all these people basically bombarding you with insults. So that shocked me a lot. And yeah, it was,
I would punch them in the face if they say that.
yeah, exactly. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you're done with giving birth. Yay. You mentioned that you did not have a good experience with what happened next. Can you
So
tell
I
us more?
felt so, you know, in Norway it's like, you're having babies. That's very good. We need more babies in Norway. And then once you have the babies, like, okay, bye. You're not important anymore. I remember I didn't know that there was a nurse for babies that doesn't want to talk about you. It's just babies, right? And I live in the city. So at the time they were like fixing Engen. It was like where I had to go. So there was only midwives certain days of the week, but you don't decide when you feel like you need a midwife, right? It's not like Tuesdays at 10. You just feel sick. And then I remember that they called from the health station to ask for my baby. And I say, hey, listen, my baby's okay, but I'm feeling this and this and this. And she was like, oh, that's not with me. And I was like, that's not with you? You're a nurse? Yeah, but as a matter of fact, don't tell me more. And then that's when I felt like, okay, let's just do us ourselves a favor. I'm giving birth to more Norwegians. Now you treat me like I'm giving birth to more Norwegians. You know?
Yeah.
So I decided, well, I'm very good at Googling. That's what I do. That's my whole job. I am going to take control on this. And I'll make sure that every time that I have an opportunity to talk about this, or every time that I have an opportunity to help a mother, I will like it was my sister. Because it doesn't matter if they talk Norwegian or not, because like it's not a prerequisite. So I can only have kids when I speak Norwegian. No, my Norwegian sucks, by the way, still. So if you can speak English or Spanish, that is what I speak, and you need my help, I'll be there. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
If somebody needs this, then let's do it. Because guess what? I think my kids are not going to look as Norwegian, and maybe they will go through the same thing that we all are going through, even though they are Norwegians. One is sort of like her father, so that I don't think she will have a problem. But the other one looks like me. So I think, well, and let's write about this, and let's put it on YouTube. So when they're searching like I had to search, they see somebody that looks like us, that says like, hey, listen, I'm not going back to my house. My water broke and I'm not moving. So you can do whatever you want, but I'm still here. I will be here waiting for you to treat me. Because the systems only change when people speak up. But when you're a migrant and when you move to another country, you just go, because it's like, I have to be so grateful that I'm here. Well, I can be grateful and I can be pissed too. Right? I'm grateful, thank you very much, but I pay taxes. So, guess what?
Treat me.
Treat me.
Yeah.
And let's be empathic. I am empathic because I know that you're overworked and you're understaffed. Now, be empathic with me. It's my first baby. I don't know anything. And hey, I studied and I was ready, and I was not ready because no mother, first-time mother, is ready or is prepared or think that things are going to be as they are. So let's talk. Let's talk. And let's include also men, because thank God I had my husband there. But also because we had a lot of conversations. Hey, no, you cannot be on the side of the doctor. You have to be on my side. If we don't include men, women, everybody, grandparents, I don't know, then things are not going to change, and things need to change. Women that are like me, that are fat, they have the right to have babies too. And they have the right to enjoy it. hey, I want to be super big. I want to have a skirt so big that people will know that I'm pregnant. Because it has to be a celebration. It's a baby coming. And if I would have said, if I would have heard what they told to your mother, I would say, guess what? Yeah, it was good when I was with my husband. It has to be good when I'm pregnant, and it has to be good afterwards.
Exactly.
Otherwise, why bother? It's a stress enough, and it's a lot of work. And let's enjoy it. Otherwise, let's not ask women to have babies then, right? Because it's stressful. So you're asking us, let's have babies, but then when we have them, it's like, okay, it's your party. That's not fair, right?
Did either of you have a similar experience?
Yeah. So when both my kids were born, it was pretty much the start of understanding the concept of mental health. The only thing I was told when the Yumo came to visit my home was to watch on the kids, or the baby, make sure that they were growing appropriately or accordingly, and letting me know that it's normal to have baby blues. Yeah, what the hell is baby blues? And give me more information about this. Didn't give me any more information, and I found myself for like an entire year crying at random points, going, I love you, I'll do anything for you, what the hell am I crying for?
Oh, do you want to define what baby blues is for our audience?
Baby blues in essence is like your hormones kind of finding its homeostasis, like its balanced state again, but then you have these pitfalls and ups and downs and swings that are so random. And as someone who just found out I have ADHD, maybe it had an impact of how my mental health was before and how it may have accelerated it over the years after that. So the baby blues was so terrible. And I honestly thought I was going crazy and trying to be a mother while I'm trying to contain my tears, and my ex-husband going, what's wrong? And felt helpless to be able to be of assistance. So that was, it was horrific, and it required a lot of self-reflection, a lot of studying, a lot of going to my Norwegian best friend going, hey, did you have this? And exchanging those stories, because it made a difference. Because then I'm like, okay, that was to be expected. All right, so that's what baby blues are. Why didn't anyone tell me about this? Through the entire time of the pregnancy and going to the helsesøster, no one prepared me for afterwards. It was is the baby okay? Is it eating all right? Is it gaining enough weight? But was there any care for the mom? No. So that part sucked. Yeah.
I think generally postnatal care is poor. The baby's taken care of. You take the baby to the helsestasjon and the health station, the health clinic. And yeah, they weigh the baby, but they don't really take care of you. They don't ask you how you are, and how is the baby going to be okay if you're not okay. So I think that's really it's a major issue, and I think all women that I've talked to have this, that you get taken care of when you're pregnant, you get taken care of during the birth, but after you have given birth, you're alive, baby's alive, you look relatively healthy. Nobody checks on how the mother is doing. And the baby blues is also like postnatal depression. So it can be mild, just a couple of days you're feeling a bit down, or it can really be bad, where everything is dark and you don't want to see your baby, you don't want to touch your baby. So this is really important that women are taken care of so that they don't get to that stage where it becomes like a clinical depression. And I mean, I had a bit of that, but I had problems, for example, with breastfeeding. So as I say, I'm a champion at pregnancy and giving birth. Afterwards, I'm totally useless. So I really, really struggled with breastfeeding, and I just did not get the kind of support that I needed. And for me, I think midwives are wonderful. Helsesøster, not so much. I'm not a fan.
They don't like each other. I didn't know that. They don't like each other. I'm like,
Well, because one is competent, the other is incompetent. So, yeah.
I don't know. I'm not going to get there, but it's like, they don't like it. They
Yes.
like each other.
And I felt that I had the racism from the helsestation, from the helsesøster.
That's something that I
is
wanted
where
to
I
ask you if you had
experienced it.
to.
That is where
This
I
whole thing
experienced
of
it.
like, is your husband treating you well? What? Why are you asking me that? Now I know that that's the way that they check. But when you're receiving somebody in your house and they ask you if your husband is beating you, it's like, do I look like I'm being beaten? It's so aggressive. It's so aggressive. Even if it was, that's not the way to handle it. So what are you going to do if I say yes, but the husband is here? Doesn't make any sense. And there's another thing. I tried everything. I went to the Barselgruppe. I went to power walking with other Norwegian mothers. I went to Open Barnehage, and I was like, what am I doing here? This whole thing of everything is solved going through the Open Barnehage. Why would I play with my baby in a kindergarten if I can play with my baby at my home? And guess what? In my home, I'm warm. I don't have to go into the rain. I don't have to, and then it's like, they ask the same questions again. Why are you here? Oh, it's so lovely that you had babies in Norway. Don't you feel like so grateful and fantastic? And you're like, no, because I miss my mother and I miss my sisters and I don't have the community here. And then I tried everything. And then the second one, I was like, I'm not trying anything. I'm just going to take control of this. But yeah, it's poor and sometimes a little bit belittling. Like, because you don't come from the same country, you don't come from the same culture, their questions are like so tone deaf.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap up, before we take questions, can you pick one thing that you would want to change about the health system in Norway? I know that's a huge question, but
Thankfully, I was working at a barnehage for the last 10 years. So I managed to get 2 years in of experience of working at a barnehage before my kids came into this world. I was actually somewhat prepared for life after giving birth to my kids. And I had already an insight of what is expected out of bringing up a child in Norway. And having to see both sides of that fence was so critical of having to bring up my children in an environment that I am so completely unfamiliar with. Open barnehage, I get your point.
I was so bored. I was like, what am I doing here?
That's the thing. On the other side, it's encouraged to bring your child to open barnehage, to socialize them in a different setting. Whereas by the time they get to a barnehage, they're already somewhat socialized. I didn't know that before everything until I got to working at a barnehage. And I see the difference between children who went to an open barnehage or coming from a home straight to a barnehage. So having to see both perspectives, I get it. It seems so weird and foreign for us foreigners to go, I'm handing my kids to strangers at 10 months, 1 year. But I see the reason why it's built that way. So
yeah, to the barnehage, to the open barnehage, it was just like I was being observed,
yeah,
playing with my baby.
as a foreigner, yeah, it feels like that. It
Right?
really does.
One, and two, why do I want to have that lunch every day? If I can have warm lunch in my house.
Yeah.
And three, I thought that this was like, okay, we leave the babies there and then we can talk as mothers, right? Because I was looking for that community.
Yeah.
Nobody talks.
No.
And of course, nobody talks to somebody that her Norwegian is as bad as mine, right? So it was like, okay, I'm leaving. The other thing that I didn't know is that there's a lot of Norwegians that have nannies. So what happened living in the city is that, and that I was really like, wow, people have nannies here? Yes, they do. And they're Spanish, and they're Philippines, and they're Asian. And what happened was that I was not networking with other mothers to see how they were dealing with, breastfeeding. I was having conversations of where to have lunch with other nannies. So I was like, there's no point. there's no point. But yes, socializing babies, that's great. I found other ways to socializing, of course, but open barnhage.
Do you have maybe one last comment, just as because you are a maternal health professional, in addition to being a mother yourself?
I would say woman-centered care.
Okay.
I think put the mother at the center and make sure that you provide what the mother needs, what the woman needs, and I think everything else falls into place.
Very good.
Then we get better babies, better socialized babies, babies who are loved. Because if you're a stressed mother, if you're a depressed mother, how are you going to manage to look after your child when you're dealing with all those issues? So I'd say put the woman at the center.
Very good.
And the rest falls into place.
Very good. All right. I think we've had a great discussion. Is there anyone? Okay, we can do a. Yeah. And is there anyone brave enough to ask a question?
Traumatized.
Yes. Yes. Who was first?
Oh, wow.
All right. Yes, please. Oh, there's a mic just behind you.
Hello. My mom, I have 3 siblings, and my mom, she usually tells me, because I love to talk to her about birth and all that. And she usually make jokes, because she says when she have a male child, we come very quick. She doesn't stress at all. But when she has a female, oh man, it takes hours and days even. So I was wondering, is that a thing or what is that?
She's messing with you.
She's messing with me. In my whole life, I've been thinking that's truth, because she gave birth to me at home.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
and the way it happened, she told me that she told my dad was going to buy some stuff outside. And even my dad said the same though. So when my mom was tired, so she went to rest. And then she felt suddenly, as she was resting, she felt like she was about to give birth. So she get out, and there was nobody in the compound. They usually live in a compound house. So she was screaming that, I think I'm going to give birth. And luckily, one of my cousins came out, and he was also nervous. He'd never seen this before. So they were like, go and get the midwife, because we have a local midwife. So he ran out, and then there was likely this lady that he saw, and like, can you please check on my auntie as I go get the midwife? So when she came, she also have never experienced this before. So my mom basically gave birth before the midwife even got in. And she had to like hold me or something. And this woman was so nervous that she was screaming. My mom was so mad, screaming at her, help me, just hold the baby. So when they told me that, my dad came back, the baby, I was out already. He was like, but I just went out. So they were just laughing at me that I just wanted to come early because I just maybe love the world or something. But so that was her experience. But with my little sister, she was giving birth here, and my big sister was giving birth in Norway, in Ghana. Okay. So she was the first. Yeah. So she said she struggled really with my first, my big sister, and my little sister as well. And then when she had my little brother, she said it was much quicker. She was the last. So and she said that when she gave birth to her son, it was quicker. So I thought that maybe it's a thing. I don't know, but maybe she was messing with me.
No,
So
I think it varies. I think it just depends on, your body, whatever's the child. I mean, the kids are different. My daughter was the last child, and she was really quick. The boys took their time. It's not an exact science. Who knows? The body just does what it does. But it's a good story from your mom, though.
Great, and we had another question. Oh, very good. Yeah.
Thank you for this panel first. And my question is, as a doula, if we didn't come here, we wouldn't even know that there's such thing as a doula here in Bergen. And then, is there any way, or any way of telling, expecting mothers from different cultures, there's a thing as home birth, or unless they go through I don't think they get much information, even the health sister, whether they go to Stockholm or not, especially if they're not like highly educated, or they didn't know about those things, then they wouldn't be as much informed. And then this also goes to having C-section versus having natural birth. It's like, I think there's kind of a scale of how much pain a mother should be in before she's like rolled to C-section. So they're like a way to tell expecting mothers from different cultures there's such thing as waiting or advocating for the mothers, or there's home birth or those things.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important question, and it's a really important issue, and it's not even just about us as foreigners, but it's also about Norwegians.
Yeah.
Because in my work as a doula, most of the people that I supported were Norwegians. Because I thought I was looking for foreigners, and it was Norwegians that came to me, and Norwegians that had all these issues that we've talked about. So it shows that there is a lot of lack in the system. And with regard to foreigners, I think that there's another layer, right? So one thing, when I came to Norway, and I was the first doula in Bergen, and I didn't know that because I thought I'm coming to Norway. I trained in Scotland, and then we moved to Norway. And I thought I'm coming to Norway. Norway is such an advanced country. There's equality between the genders, you know. It's really, you know, barnehage, everything is just way ahead of the UK, for example. And I was shocked that the people didn't know about doulas. The midwives were very negative towards me. They didn't want to know. So I kind of was coming from the back and trying to be careful, and being a black person, and they're saying I'm a doula, and then everyone's like, oh, back off, you know, what is this? So it was a bit difficult for me. But I did go to the health stations, and I had pamphlets, and I put them up, and very few people got in touch with me that way. So I did try. But now, so many years later, what's happened at the moment, they have a project about multicultural doulas who focus specifically on immigrant women. And I think this is a very good initiative, and my current PhD student is going to look at that as part of her PhD research, just to see how does it work, and also to see what is it that immigrant women need. What are their needs? Because we feel that they need something more, being foreign. And like you're saying, maybe being from a lower education, you don't have the access to, for example, the things that I did and the kind of knowledge that I had. So I think the multicultural doulas are going to be working with people, and I think that's a really great resource. And we're hoping that if they see that this actually makes a difference, this can actually become part of the health system, where we're becoming a multicultural society, and where we're actually really taking into consideration that there are other people in our society who maybe need some extra help. As well as generally improving the system. Antenatal classes, that's what you said, right? Where you get 3 hours to be told you expect this. It doesn't help you. It actually needs to be, with my second son, I had an antenatal class over a month where every weekend we met and we dealt with different issues. Here you don't get that. So that's missing. So I've seen so many needs that are here, and unfortunately I no longer work as a doula because I have another job. And I feel frustrated because I know there's so much that needs to be done. So I think there's a lot of educating that needs to do. We need to get more people on board, and we need to get more people working with these issues, and we need to highlight the issue of maternal health, that women are important, not just to give babies to populate the country, but they need to be taken care of, I think. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. There is some progress, but we still have a way to go in this country, which is a wonderful country in many ways.
You are raising something very important, and you ask a question on what do we think that needs to change. And if you ask me, we need communication. We live in a world where internet is so amazing, but still it's so hard to find it. Yeah. And it's there. I've met really good midwives. I've read really good helsesøsters. I know, and that's true, Norwegians are also mothers because they don't talk, but then you become their friends, and then they're like, this experience was horrible, right? I don't understand why, for instance, if you have twins, instead of giving you 24 months or 20 months as a parental leave, they don't put the two parents in parental leave because you don't need a longer time. You need more hands, right? So, of course, those decisions are made because there's no mothers working on this type of things. Once you become a mother, you know exactly. But also you need mothers doing communication projects where we put the information where mothers can find it. Because it's very hard. I've seen the doula saying like, oh, you can come to me. But if you don't know what a doula is, you're like, why am I calling you? Right? But if there's spaces like this, and more of us are coming and saying, hey, come. There's stories that you need to hear before you decide to have a baby. Or if you're not sure. Or if you already had a baby but you want to have another one. Right? So communication is key. Instagram, come on. We can learn how to, make our makeup. How are we not sharing more of this? Right?
Not just communication, but I think representation is really important.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had seen a Filipino or a Canadian, well, as if Canadians really had an outside look, if there was someone who had somewhat of a representation to what I can relate to, it would have made a world of a difference. Instead of having to stare at, sorry to say, just a white face who's telling me all this information, but I can't seem to grasp it because I can't relate to it. It's useless. I wish there was someone that looked like me to tell me, hey, it's okay, you can go through this. This is the information you need. And in a way that I can feel like it's home. That makes a difference.
I think, Mary, and then we'll go to you, and then you. Oh, and patience. So many questions, it's great.
Yeah, thank you for a very great talk. And I have a lot of questions, but I'll start with the first one. Regarding postpartum depression after giving birth. How can you help somebody who's dealing with postpartum depression, like practically?
Ooh.
Not only women that have postpartum depression, any mother. Go and make them some food. Because you never eat warm, and that trigger anybody. That's a trigger. Go and clean their house. Help them fold clothes. Let them cry. There's not enough spaces for us to cry. And we cry for whatever reason, but it's okay for any reason if you decide to cry. And just sit there with them.
Yeah.
Because they know that they're going through something that they cannot understand, but somebody has to hold that baby, because babies thrive on contact. So if you don't hold that baby, the mother cannot hold the baby, and the father has to go and work, or the other parent doesn't have to be a father, but the other person cannot, because they have to work. That's how the system is built. Somebody has to carry that baby. And if a mother that has a postpartum depression is seeing that somebody else is carrying the baby, there's some load that you're taking away from her.
Yeah.
Because it's a very difficult situation.
Yeah, having to have the extra pair of hands to do the practical things is a load off our shoulders. Because the moment that we can't carry our baby when they're crying, there's a sense of shame and guilt in it. There's a sense of failure of being a mom. Yeah,
Failure,
right?
A horrible failure, yeah.
And you kind of judge yourself as like, why can't I do all the housework and take care of myself and care for this baby when my partner's out making money and I'm supposed to balance all of this? It's a hard balance. So having extra pair of hands, I know it's not in the Norwegian culture to like go visit family and then like in the first 2 weeks they want to keep the space of like the parents having time with the baby. But I think it is so important to have that extra pair of hands of, hey, drop off some food for them so that way they have time for the baby instead of balancing out chores and for each other and for the baby and the house and everything. Something as small as practical things goes a long way.
Yeah. Maybe we should, take another.
Yeah, thank you very much for the talk. My research in the university is more about cross-cultural competence and communication in healthcare and all of that. So, and you've talked a lot about how there's a need for more information to be shared, especially with migrants, because that's what I am more focused on. So I was just wondering, because, in health service delivery, when we talk about discrimination, it's usually more to people that have disability or people that belong to subgroups in the society. But as people, migrants that do not look like ordinary Norwegians, do you think that there are preconceptions that health professionals, doctors, nurses, midwives have of you? Do they think that maybe because you're black, for example, you have a high pain threshold? Or are there ways that you see discrimination in form of these preconceptions coming up?
Of course.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think I've read about women not getting epidurals because, I think you can handle the pain.
What's up with that?
And I don't know where that comes from. I really don't know where that comes from. But that has been some women's experiences. It hasn't personally been my experience, but it is a big thing, and it's a big issue for women to be heard. So I think this whole issue of cross-cultural competence is important, and just treating people as people. Not saying, oh, because you're black, or because you're Latino, or because you're Filipino, you must be like this, right? And I think this is one of the issues that we face. I remember, when I said I faced racism, initially the health sister came to our home and said, oh, we're going to give your child a TB vaccination. We said, why? And she said, well, because, because I'm Zimbabwean, right? Because we need to protect Norwegian children. So there was an assumption that, one, I was going home all the time. There was, two, an assumption that in my home country, TB is everywhere. We get off the plane and there's TB waiting. So we refused. And then the second time I went to the Helsestasjon, and that's why I don't like Helsesøster. I had a nice one after that. This was this one. Went to the Helsestasjon, and she was like, oh, so you've probably had hepatitis. And I was like, no. She was like, well, you probably didn't know you had it. It's a bit like having a cold. And I said, no. So then I thought, okay, why did she think I had hepatitis? So I went home and I Googled, and it was about poor sanitary conditions. So she assumed because I was African, I must be coming from somewhere where the sewage is flowing in the streets. So, there was that kind of assumption is extremely destructive. And the fact is, I can stand up for myself, right? But imagine somebody else. And this was in Solheimsviken, which is sort of low socioeconomic, a lot of immigrants, a lot of refugees. So I just imagined how people have been met there, and what kinds of things they've been told, what kinds of things they've been made to do. So I think it's really, really also important that we educate the health system and representation. We get more second-generation people into these different these different health systems, so that when you go there, you actually have a variety of colors and cultures that you can identify with, who look at you as a person, but also for the Norwegians to just see people as people. A woman is a woman who needs a hug, who needs kindness. I think that's really important, rather than judgment because of how you look. So, there's work to be done.
And I think the lady in the beret.
This is a question for everyone. Since the corona situation, I know that you're only allowed to have one person when giving birth. Who would you guys recommend having for support, your mother or your husband?
Mom, hands down.
So my
Mom, hands down. If it wasn't my mom, it would be my sister. And if it wasn't my sister, like my best friend, I'm freaking grateful that she was there. And the fact that it was a bonus that she's Norwegian. She's a nurse, and she knew the system. She was my backbone. And when I couldn't advocate for me, she advocated for me. So when I said I don't want certain people in my room, she made sure those people were kept outside. You have every call of who you want in that room. But if someone's trying to force themselves in, you have the right to tell them no. So, if it's that one person, any females around you who have seen you through your best and your worst, take them, hands down. Sorry to the guys, sorry, honestly. It's a whole different experience, honestly.
So I had my last one just when the corona thing, just as they said, okay, you can bring whoever. But I would, if I had a baby now, I would call my husband again, because we said that we were going to do this together. But also there's a thing that when you're living with somebody, and somebody that is looking at you the way that you look, because it's just that your whole body destroys and then it gets back again. It's like a weird situation. But when you're there and you're like, bare naked emotionally and physically, and there's someone there, I told him when I have my second baby, I love you more now because you're here with me in this, and you didn't panic and you didn't go anywhere, and you still said that I was the most beautiful woman in the world. Then I think we're good to go. I think there's a lot of years with you and me here.
Can I reiterate that? I want to take that back. Because honestly, now that I have my partner, if I went through that with my partner, hands down, he would be there because of that. Absolutely, because of that. But yeah, apart from him, it would be my bestie.
But yes, bring women.
But yeah.
It's just that when a woman is strong, oh my God, you cannot change that. When a woman advocate for another woman, there's like
a war can blow out.
Yeah, there's
nothing's
nothing
going.
better.
Yeah, there's nothing
There's
better.
nothing
to
better.
defend you.
There's no doubt. There's no like, no. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so old, right? If I say my mother's 93. So but yeah, I would have said if I'd had the chance, it would have been my mother, because she's amazing, and she would have made me feel safe, and she wouldn't have demanded anything of me. She would have just been there for me because she's that kind of person. So yeah, in an ideal world, I would have had my mother with me. My husband's great, but yeah.
Great. Do we have time for more questions, or do we need to?
I don't know. Do we have time?
Does the house say? Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. So patience, and then yeah.
Actually, the question I wanted to ask Mary took it, but then I thought of thinking of the something you said about how you and your partner kind of like drifted apart after the first baby came out, and so I'm wondering, like, the whole co-parenting stuff, you know, your body has changed, things doesn't look the way it did, and you don't feel the same, and everything is completely different, and now you are taking care of this baby, but also taking care of your relationship with this other person. Like, how did you guys manage the whole co-parent thing? Because I've heard that a lot of relationships are being tested when children, come in the picture.
If you want to have a baby with somebody, to keep that somebody with you, no, then that's the wrong route. Everything gets tested.
Yep.
I don't know if this is psychologically approved and the experts will agree with me, but this is what I did. We had a conversation where I reminded him that we said that we were going to do this together. And I also understood that he comes from a generation, he's older than me, where men are there, but men are not really there, right? They're in the room, and they know that they're fathers, but they're not the type of father that will, do certain things with their kids. They're just there to, clean their teeth and, feed them, and that's it. So we decided that we were going to do the best things that we know with our kids. Like, for instance, I don't like to go outside a lot with my kids. Like this whole mountain thing, and even if it's a storm outside, no, that's not me. But he's really good. And I told him I would love for my daughters to know about that, and to get to know, the outdoors world and all of that. Also, my husband is a really good cook. Teach them that, because if they have a connection with their father, their life will be better. So I have to remind him that that's the way that you connect with a baby. Of course, when he did that, then I had time for myself, right? And we started doing like a list. It sounds very like management, and it's a horrible conversation to have, because you want your husband to be like all romantic. You don't want like, okay, did you do the laundry today? Because I'm going to do the washing of whatever. You don't want to have those conversations, but you need to have them. And that's why I'm always saying, bring the men into this conversation, because having a baby is not only having the baby. The whole dynamic of the house changes. And it's like, okay, I'm doing a lot and you're not seeing it. And the other one is like, now I don't have you. Like, the whole conversation of, you have to be a mother and you also have to be a wife. No, the wife has to stop because I'm a mother. Now right? And the second thing that we did is that we assume that we are small barns for eldre. I love that concept because it's parents of small children. And we have to go through this until they're 6. When they're 6, things change again.
Yeah.
But then let's assume, you and me, that this is who we are. Our hair might not be wonderful, our house will be a mess, but if a mess is together, don't expect me to have the house clean.
Yeah.
And I will not expect you to be okay after you come from work. Because he's allowed also to be sad and frustrated, and he also wants to dance and go and have a drink. But we assume that we don't drink right now because our babies need us in the morning on Saturday. So it's okay. We will drink in 5 years. But it's together. You know what I mean? We will not go into a full party, but in 5 years we will. And it's okay because we're together. If he goes to a party, and because that's something that people do also. Men go to a party and then the woman stays with the babies. Or the woman goes with her friends. And I don't know how healthy that is, but that's my opinion. I don't know how healthy that is. Because it triggers frustration. It triggers, I want to do this more and I can't. And when you have babies through that scarcity mode, there's no fun. There's no joy. And you need that joy and you need that fun because life is hard with babies.
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that when you decide to become parents, you're making a choice.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're just going to be a parent sometimes. You're making a choice and there's sacrifices that are involved, especially in that small barns for elder time. So I think that's really, really important when you decide to have kids, to say there are going to be some sacrifices. There's going to be a time when we're not doing very much, when we're not going out very much. But we need to be together to support each other and to bring up our children together. Yes, you can do some things here and there, but it's not like she's the woman, therefore she's breastfeeding, therefore she does everything. And I know the one time that my experience with our son, the one that my husband, my middle child, we did everything together with him. We were like, so he's a very loved child. With my daughter, we now had a 4-year-old and then the baby. So I had the baby and he took care of our son. And that was difficult for me because I did feel very alone with the baby while he was taking the little one out to play and whatever. And I felt like you're not really. And my daughter, she'd say to my son, "Go to your father. This is my mummy." She even saw that, this is my mother and that's your father. I mean, we got over that and they're fine now. But it was something that we didn't expect. We suddenly saw that, okay, I have to do this and you have to do that, and we didn't have family. So things like that, it's like the first child is one thing, the second child is a different thing, maybe the third child is a different thing. So you kind of have to keep the communication open and know that you have to communicate and talk about the difficult things and the struggles that you have and try and work things out. So it's really, it does change things. And that you don't have to be perfect. My husband still loved me, although I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, you look great. And I was like, no, I don't. Look at my stomach. And he was, he didn't see that. And I think sometimes with women, we give ourselves such a hard time.
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh, I need to be perfect and look like this. And your man doesn't see it because, she said, he saw you give birth. And he's like, wow, this is a Wonder Woman, right?
Yeah,
so we kind of have to accept ourselves and just let some of this stuff go because, they love us anyway. Yeah.
All right. So it looks like any last questions? Last call. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a follow-up. You said there were so many people in the room while you were birthing, and it's like some people can advocate for themselves when they're giving birth and say, "Oh, this is enough. I can't have this many people." But then at the same time, they are, especially if it's your first child, you feel like you're going to be mistreated because you are considered like a difficult patient or a difficult mother because you don't want to have this assistant and that assistant, and it's not like they come and check on you. They come and kind of touch you, and then even if it's like it's kind of hard when everybody's coming in and out and everybody's touching you.
I can feel the trigger on having to listen to that again. Yeah.
So how can we advocate, or how can we tell mothers, which are new mothers, about how to advocate for themselves if they can do that?
They can.
If I could turn back the clock and talk to myself 10 years ago, I would tell myself that it's okay to be checked to make sure it's for second or third opinions, but to have the students there and go through that and you're not comfortable with it, have the guts to say no. Because to have, say, 15 people come and check you over a span of like 15, 20 minutes is kind of traumatizing, and trying to process that afterwards, knowing how many people have touched you, and you said yes to it because you felt the pressure to get the answers, but don't want to be difficult because of the cultural clashes that you're being programmed with. Just tell yourself no. Just go ahead, do the medical stuff, but everyone else, no, be done with it. Because the process period afterwards is hard. It took me years to kind of understand, oh, that's what it was. And it's already bad enough, like post-birth of like the baby blues and reliving the traumas. And then to think of what was going on, you don't need that on top of everything else.
But I think it's putting a lot of responsibility on the woman, because you are at a very vulnerable time. You're in pain. You've got all sorts of things going through your head or not. So I think having somebody who is there with you too, and who you've had a discussion about what you want and what you don't want. One of the things that I did and that my clients have done is to write a birth plan. One of the things I wrote in my birth plan was I do not want students. I was very clear about that. I do not want, random students coming and touching me. Exactly,
Yeah.
but for the first, and this is what I mean about the importance of education, because in Norway, they will not ask you, were you asked?
About birth plan?
No, were you asked about the students coming to the room? Did they say, is it okay for you?
They
No.
do that now.
They
do
do
that
it
now.
now, but before,
No,
they
they
both
did.
came in,
Yeah.
doctor checked me, and then asked, can they check me too? I was put on the spot. How
See,
can
'cause
I
you're
say
like-
no to that?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And you're very vulnerable.
Yeah.
So that's actually unfair. So that's training the medical students.
Yeah.
We have to go right back to training the medical students about how to treat people in a humane way. But I know from my experience with Norway, there's a lot of there's no consent.
No.
Because I've had experience of the UK where everything was explained to me and I was asked for my consent for everything. Here, nobody's ever asked me for my consent. I have to ask them to say, okay, what are you doing? And I've seen with my clients how they just come in and say, oh, now we're going to do this, and this whole thing of, as one of my clients said, she felt like everyone who walked in the corridor came and checked to see how far she was. And that's invasive, and it's almost assault,
Yeah.
right? So I think these are the things about informing, educating, and not just educating us as women, but also the healthcare workers about how we feel when you come in and midwife number 5 comes and checks. Or just come just in case. Can you just check? I mean, come on.
There's something else. We think that they're going to mistreat us if we say no.
Yeah.
But in my experience,
They won't.
people are not confrontational.
No.
So when you are, they get scared. The third time that I said no to Wayne and putting myself in that scale, people stop asking.
Yes.
Because they knew that with me, that's one thing. 2, I will always say to women, read the room. There's always somebody that is leading the others. And make sure that that person knows your name. I was always like, hey, and with this smile, I'm Lucia. So glad that I'm here. Thank you for giving me the most experience, the best experience of my life. And then, that was it. All flowers and butterflies, and because they knew my name.
Yeah.
So, of course, you're vulnerable. Be prepared. If you see a woman, tell them, read the room,
Be prepared.
be prepared. Of course, and bring somebody.
Yeah. Yes. Bring somebody if you can.
Yeah.
All right. Last question.
No.
All right. Well, I cannot thank our panelists enough. I want to give you one last round of applause. Yeah. And I think we're done. So, yes, thank you all for coming and being willing to ask and learn and listen. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.